Welcome back, everyone, to another episode from Pro Engineering. In this episode, I want to take a look at a new WPL car, but I actually wanted to start by doing an unboxing. So here's the box here, and so let me be very clear. I bought this from Banggood, and Banggood did a fantastic job of packaging it. Unfortunately, I should have taken a picture of how the box arrived. I think the post office used it as a chalk for a tire. So we'll just open the box up over here. So that's awesome. All right, so this is a Toyota Land Cruiser, and it has quite a number of body pieces. And as much as I want to investigate how these look right now, I'm going to hold off and start with the chassis. This is a special edition model. It's a little WPL. That's actually really a fantastic logo that WPL has. I believe there's a translation, as I've been told by one of my subscribers, that WPL stands for in China, Naughty Dragon. So it's actually a really cool company name. Wow, screwdriver. That's kind of a cool mold on it. But yeah, it did come with it. Wheel weights. This edition is supposed to have a number of upgraded parts, like it's got a little underdrive attachment on the motor. That's kind of cool. Brass gears. I believe, yes. This also has metal axles, metal gears. I'm excited to try and build this. I have used these metal axle housings before in Project Lunchbox, which is not here right now. They seem to work pretty well in that. I had a couple of the threaded holes that weren't properly threaded, and I don't expect these to be any better or any worse, but they haven't given me any grief. This is very surprising. So you can see that we have the axle housings here that are metal, the front and rear axle covers. I don't know what these are yet, but they're metal. Perhaps these go on the outside of the axle. These are the steering knuckles, and these are additional little mounts. I believe these mounts, just because of the hole spacing, somehow go onto the axles as such. You do have bearings. That's very cool. These are your bearings. Some set screws in there as well. These are the axles. Wow, these are universal joints. Hardware, brass gears. This isn't going to be a step-by-step build video. I will go over certain elements that I see necessary, but you do have your instructions right here. In areas like this, they're pretty straightforward. I haven't actually gone through all of these instructions yet, but I have noticed that some of the WPL instructions can be a little bit confusing. So if I do reach a point like that, I will highlight it. I wanted to go over the instruction manual very quickly. Whoever wrote this needs to start writing all instruction manuals from now on. So so for example here, right here we have, here comes the complicated part. Yeah, you're right. Here is gambate. I believe this roughly translates into do your best, which, thank you. I appreciate that. You can also see that it does show you what's going to be going, or what's going to be necessary for the next phase of the build. Here we have almost there. My favorite here, almost there, yo. Okay, very poignant. Gearbox is the easiest part. I'm loving this right now. I didn't lie to you, right? Okay, thank you. No, you didn't. Awesome. Sweet. You can test drive now. Thank you so much. And this is my favorite here. Congratulations for completing the best work of art in the history. I love it. I love it. Clearly, whoever wrote these is nothing more than the same person that wrote the end credits to Ghosts and Goblins on the NES. And there's a little bit more of that here in the bodywork. So, yay, the body shell is done. That's great. Do observe carefully. Yeah. Okay. I've heard people speak English on a daily basis and not do it that well. Front shell's complete. I mean, it's just really, really fantastic stuff. I'm not even being sarcastic here. I like all this. It's kind of uplifting and a moral boost as you're building the car. Something I wanted to note when installing the gear on the axle shaft is that there's a little notch. I'll show you on the rear one right here, and there's a good 1.5 millimeters of travel that it can go back and forth on this. So it's possible that if you have it too far to one side, that the axle will stick out too much on one side and not enough on the other. So what I do is I install it like so with the bearings, have this loose, and then move the axle back and forth until you get it right in the middle and then snug it down. So basically, I mean, I just eyeball it, it's good enough, but you can also measure the end of the axle here to the beginning of the housing right here. And this just helps you to get a more symmetric system. At this point here, we can just put the cap on it. We'll grease it in a minute. Check out these tiny little universal stub axles. These are really nice. Although this is a WPL vehicle, I've never seen this level of detail on a WPL car. A couple things to note here. It's asking to measure all these tie rods from the end of the tie rod to the end of the tie rod. And in order to accurately do that, some of the tie rods, I've trimmed them all on these, some of these tie rods have a little extra plastic on them. In fact, here's one on the shock. You can see it here. This little bit, when added to both sides of the tie rod link, is going to add some length. So you want to just trim this little tiny bit of flash here off with an X-Acto knife, and I'll do it right here. Please be careful. The X-Acto knife is a very, very dangerous tool if not used properly, and you'll get a more accurate measurement now. All right, upon assembling the transmission, or I should say the transfer case, I've noticed that these bearings, it has 3 of them, one on the side with the motor and 2 on the opposite side. They're not shown particularly well. It just kind of looks like little rings, but just note that they are bearings and there are 3 of them, so you will have to install them. Also, the screws that hold the motor in are a very large machine screw. I believe they're an M3, and they are one of the only M3s included in the kit. Another item to note, the frame on this is powder coated, which gives you a very nice kind of crackle finish on it. I think it looks both finished and high quality. Some little imperfection there on the powder coating, but again, I'm not going to worry about it. To install the damper, it actually doesn't fit into the hole simply because of the amount of powder coating. So again, this is one of those issues where it's a good problem to have. I'm going to take my razor blade and just run it along the inside just to scrape out some of the powder coating. And I'm putting it on from the wrong side, but just to show you, the spring just pops in there. It's still a little bit tight, and I see that kind of bending it at an angle here. I haven't taken off enough powder coating from the top, but once it's out, it should kind of flip around very nicely. So a couple things to note when you're putting the chassis together. Make sure that you put in the ball studs. There's 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put those in when they're just chassis rails, otherwise you've got to kind of snake the Allen head in here, which I did because I didn't notice that very clearly. The instructions show to do these first before putting the chassis together. Also to note, this chassis piece here, this front brace and this rear one, are in one of the large black plastic bags that you don't actually open until this part because you've just not gotten to that stage. They're with a number of other black parts for the body. I also didn't see in the instructions, and perhaps I just missed it, but I've checked a couple times. This is where the ball stud for the Panhard bar goes, and that is this bar straight across. What this does is anybody that's got a 4-link vehicle will know that when the servo is not placed on the axle like some of the larger monster truck RC cars have it set up, if the servo is placed on the chassis right here, simply the act of turning the wheels left and right will pull the axle in either direction. But the Panhard bar, as you can see here, it prevents that. Axle will still have its articulation, but the Panhard bar will prevent the axle from sliding. So that's kind of a cool little addition, and thusly it only has 3 of the 4 links. I want to put the wheels and tires on real quick, and for that, it's kind of cool. We're going to use the wheel weights, so that's really awesome. Let's throw those on, and hopefully we'll have no issues. As you can see, the chassis is complete. I put the drive shafts in. These are a lengthened version of the standard WPL upgrade drive shafts that I've seen in the past. So on the C24 or C14, you can have a very similar style, just a little bit shorter. And the same is true for some of the earlier military vehicles. The reason for this, and I actually, while we're here, I'm not entirely sure that the wheelbase is any different. Okay, wheelbase appears to be the same. So the main reason for the longer drive shafts is that this one here has a gear reduction, which is very, very simple. In fact, this little transfer case does nothing more than transmit the power to the rear axle, to the front axle, but all the gear reduction is done here. Whereas on some of the other WPLs, this one's got the 2-speed, so let's look at this one. This one here has the standard transmission. You can see that the transfer case is here in the center, and thusly requires shorter drive shaft. That's the reason why the Land Cruiser has the longer drive shafts. It does appear as well that there is another mounting hole in the rear for perhaps a different body that may come out in the future. I'm not aware of one right now that would take advantage of that, but I'm by no means an expert. At this point here, I would usually put the electronics in, but with this more complex Land Cruiser body, I really don't know where I'm going to have room. So I'm going to pause at this point and switch my attention to the body. But given the complexity of the body, I can't just throw it on here. I'm going to have to do some detailing. We've made a lot of progress here with the body, and I just wanted to show how easy it was to give the car a bit of a more unique look. I went ahead and shot the car with a matte clear coat, and I did this because I found that the stock molded plastic just seemed way, way, way too shiny. I know that's odd for me to say because I do like things very shiny, but I don't know. For me, it needed to be a little bit less glossy, and I kind of dig the look. On the interior, you can see that I very quickly spray painted the majority of the inner pieces in this brown color, and then to give it some more contrast, I painted the seats and the dash in a lighter tan color. It is important to note that this plastic is semi-translucent, so if you spray the brown directly behind the yellow, you will actually darken the color of the body. So it's very important that you primer everything in white first and then give it the interior color that you're looking for. Otherwise, it's just going to screw up the outside finish of the body. You can see on the inside that not only did I paint the bottom part of this rear cab section of the Land Cruiser, but I also did the top because it was very noticeable when I had it all yellow inside that the top was just kind of, it looked unfinished. I didn't mind that with the doors because I think this is quite common with off-road vehicles that you have a door panel in one color and metal that is the body color, but I did want to kind of point that out, and I also painted the trim around the 4 back windows. The car's body is basically all together, and I mean, the thing looks incredibly good. Given the fact that this is a $80 kit, I mean, look at the body. We are not talking about 1/10 scale. They claim to be 1/16, but I think it's probably closer to 1/12 or 1/13 scale. You'll notice some upgrades, and I don't want to talk about this just yet, but the standard grille does have a little WPL emblem, and it has a couple of buckets here that you can paint silver. We have simply modified it a little bit by giving it an actual grille that says Toyota, but again, we'll talk about that later, as well as the upgraded rear bumper. The standard bumper is this little plastic piece here, and there's a couple of little pads here for decals. It would normally have this yellow molded piece as part of the body. I simply cut it off, and this would have snapped into those little holes in the yellow piece. Of course, we can't leave good enough alone. We've modified this part, but again, I don't want to talk about upgrades in this video. I simply had to do them while building the vehicle in the first place, so we'll cover those in a upcoming video. The Land Cruiser has been fully assembled and completed, and here we are. I have to admit that this overall build and assembly really surprised me because I found that the quality of the components on this C34 has gotten infinitely better than way back when I first started with my C12 and then my C24. There was very little issues with parts not fitting together. There was very little flash on the parts. You really can't see many sink marks in the plastic. The parting lines are nice and clean. There's just really few issues that I found with the vehicle. I have not driven it yet, and I will say this. When fully assembling the axles, you can't just torque everything down. What I had to do was put everything together, and as I was screwing it down, make sure everything didn't shift during the process of assembly to ensure that when it was assembled that it would have minimal drag. And I still found that there was too much drag for my liking, but I haven't driven this yet, so we'll see how the performance goes. Some areas that I am concerned with, it's probably hard to see this, and this just may require some adjustments, but I follow the instructions very closely when building this, and I found that the car keeps sagging to the left. It just keeps dragging, and then when I turn the front wheels, the adjustment on the, actually I don't know what the adjustment, one of the linkages up here, although being adjusted according to the instruction manual, seems to be too short. So what happens is when you turn to the left, the body torques down a little bit. Again, I don't want to mess with that until I take it for a spin and just see how it negatively affects the drivability of the vehicle, and then we can iron it out a little bit. I will have a video coming up very soon about some of the upgrades that I've done on this vehicle. Do I have a battery in here? I don't. The battery is going to be stored here under the hood, and I absolutely love this effect. Though, and I don't know why it's doing this. There doesn't seem to be much warpage on the hood or the cowl, but the hood likes to get caught a little bit here. But I mean, you can kind of see it. You see that little fold it's doing? So it's just better to just kind of pop it up a little bit and open it. I suppose a little bit of sanding back here is going to solve that problem, but I haven't even gotten down that far yet. I am really looking forward to throwing some drivers in here. In fact, I want to have at least 4 people in this vehicle. So if anybody finds any dolls that will fit, please let me know. I'd love to get them in here. I want to take this out for a spin, so the next time you see this will be in a nice driving video of this incredibly, beautifully scale-looking WPL C34 all metal edition. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you found this video informative.